Mary Mallon spent 26 years in quarantine on an island in the East River. New York's health department knew of hundreds of carriers exactly like her. Every other one of them walked free. The peach ice cream was the last thing she made for them. Late August 1906. A rented summer house in Oyster Bay, Long Island. The cook carried a bowl of fresh peaches cut into cream out onto the porch, and the Warren family ate it in the heat. And within 11 days, 6 of the 11 people in that house were burning with typhoid fever. The cook was not sick. The cook had never been sick. 3 weeks later, she was gone, and nobody in the house could tell the investigator where she went. Her name was Mary Mallon. She was Irish, 40-something, unmarried, and one of the better private cooks working the wealthy households of New York. She had come over from County Tyrone as a teenager. She had built a life out of one skill, and that skill was food. The man hired to find her was named George Soper. He was a sanitary engineer, not a doctor, and he had been brought in by the banker who owned the Oyster Bay house, because the banker had a problem. Typhoid in a summer rental was a catastrophe. Nobody would ever lease it again. Soper did what engineers do. He looked for a source. He checked the water supply first. Clean. He checked the outdoor privy. Clean. He looked at the clams, because a local fisherman had been selling shellfish taken from water near a sewage outflow, and for a while that seemed to be the answer. But some of the sick had never eaten the clams. So he went backwards through the household staff, and he found that a cook had been hired 3 weeks before the outbreak, and had quit 3 weeks after it. That was the pattern he couldn't unsee. Here is what you need to understand about typhoid fever in 1906. It killed roughly 1 in 10 of the people it infected. It came from Salmonella typhi, a bacterium that lives in the human gut and travels in human waste, and the standard story of an outbreak was simple. Contaminated water. Contaminated milk. A sick person coughing over the soup. Find the sick person, find the source. Soper's problem was that his suspect had never been sick a day in her life. He started tracing her employment history backwards, household by household, and what he assembled over the following months was the strangest document in the early history of American public health. Between 1900 and 1907, Mary Mallon had cooked for 8 families. 7 of them had typhoid outbreaks. 22 people fell ill. In Dark Harbor, Maine, a household of 9 had 4 cases within 2 weeks of her arrival. In Sands Point, 4 servants in one house went down together. A young girl in one of the families died. Every single time, Mary was fine. Every single time, she left shortly after the sickness started and moved on to the next kitchen and cooked. You would think a person cannot carry a disease she does not have. For most of human history, that was simply true as far as anyone could tell. Sickness was visible. The sick person was the danger, and when the sick person recovered or died, the danger was over. But in the 1880s and 1890s, laboratory bacteriology started producing results that did not fit that picture. Robert Koch, the German physician who had identified the bacteria behind anthrax, tuberculosis, and cholera, began arguing that some people harbored and shed dangerous organisms while showing no symptoms at all. By 1902, he was describing healthy carriers as a genuine public health problem. The idea existed on paper in German medical journals. It had never once been demonstrated in a living, named, walking human being in the United States. Soper thought he had found the first one. He needed a sample to prove it. In March 1907, he tracked her to a kitchen on Park Avenue, where a laundress had already died and the daughter of the house was dying. He walked in and introduced himself and asked Mary Mallon, a working woman he had never met, for samples of her urine, her stool, and her blood, because he believed she was making people die. She picked up a carving fork and drove him out of the building. Put yourself in that hallway for 1 second. Not in Soper's shoes. In hers. You have never been ill. You are being told by a stranger in a suit that your body, which feels completely normal, is a weapon. There is no test result yet, no doctor, no evidence you can see or feel. There is only a man telling you that everything you know about yourself is wrong. She did what almost anyone would do. She refused to believe it. Soper tried again at her rooming house, this time bringing a colleague for safety. She threw them both out. So he went to the New York City Department of Health, and the health department sent Dr. Sarah Josephine Baker, and Baker brought police officers. Mary vanished through a back door into a neighboring building. It took 5 hours to find her, crouched behind a pile of ash cans in a yard, her dress caught in the door of a closet. Baker later wrote that they took her to the hospital, sitting on top of her in the ambulance, because there was no other way to keep her in it. The lab results came back. Her stool was loaded with Salmonella typhi. It was concentrated in her gallbladder, which had become a permanent reservoir, seeding her intestines with bacteria for years without ever making her ill. She became the first healthy carrier of typhoid ever identified in North America. And here is where the story stops being about a bacterium and starts being about what people do with an idea they cannot yet feel. They put her on North Brother Island, a 13-acre strip of land in the East River, next to a hospital for infectious disease, in a one-room cottage alone. She was not charged with a crime. There was no trial. She was held under a public health provision that allowed the city to detain a person who threatened the public, and she stayed there for nearly 3 years. She wrote letters. She had her own sample sent secretly to a private laboratory in Manhattan, and that lab, testing the same woman, kept reporting no typhoid at all. She was not lying. Carriers shed bacteria intermittently in waves, and a single negative sample proves nothing. But Mary had 2 labs telling her 2 different things, and she believed the one that matched what her body was telling her. In 1909, she sued for her freedom and lost. In 1910, a new health commissioner released her on one condition. She was never to cook for anyone again. She signed the affidavit and walked off the island. Then she disappeared. A laundress does not earn what a cook earns. That is the plain economics of it. Mary Mallon was a single immigrant woman in her 40s with one marketable skill, and she had just been ordered to abandon it and take work that paid a fraction as much. For 5 years she moved through the city under other names, and for 5 years the health department could not find her. In January 1915, typhoid broke out at Sloan Maternity Hospital in Manhattan. 25 people fell ill. 2 of them died. The staff joked about the woman running the kitchen, calling her Typhoid Mary as a joke, because the name had already leaked into the newspapers by then, and it was the kind of thing people said. She was working under the name Mrs. Brown. Remember the peaches on the porch in Oyster Bay? Uncooked fruit cut with her hands served cold. That was the detail Soper had fixed on in 1906, because heat kills Salmonella typhi, and Mary's cooked food was mostly safe. It was the one dish she made that never saw a flame. 9 years later, in a hospital kitchen, she was still making desserts. She ran again. They caught her again. This time there was no sympathy anywhere, and no debate. She went back to North Brother Island, and she stayed there for 23 more years. She lived in the cottage. She eventually worked in the island's laboratory washing bottles. She had a dog. In 1932, she had a stroke that paralyzed her, and she died 6 years later in 1938, at 69 years old. The autopsy found live typhoid bacteria in her gallbladder. Now hold 2 facts side by side, because both are true and they do not sit comfortably together. Mary Mallon was directly linked to at least 53 cases of typhoid and 3 deaths. She was told, in plain language, that her cooking killed people, and she went back to cooking anyway, twice, under a false name. And Mary Mallon was one of hundreds. By the 1920s, New York's health department had a registry of several hundred known healthy typhoid carriers. Some had caused far more infections than she had. Almost none of them were confined. They were monitored, moved into other jobs, sometimes paid a small stipend. A milk handler in Camden was linked to a far larger outbreak. He was released after a few weeks. She was the only one held for life. So what made her different? Part of it was that she fought. She never accepted the diagnosis, never signed on to the story the city told about her. And a person who will not agree to be careful cannot be trusted to be careful. Her second escape into a hospital kitchen ended any argument about that. But part of it was who she was. Irish, poor, female, unmarried, an immigrant, and loud about it, at a moment when American cities were nervous about all 5 of those things at once. The press gave her a nickname with her disease in it, and once you are Typhoid Mary, you are not a woman who works as a cook. You are the thing itself. And this is the part that reaches forward to you. Your instinct, right now, listening to this, is probably to sort her. Villain or victim. She knew or she didn't. Pick one and the story resolves, and you can stop thinking about it. But she is the clearest case in medical history of a person who was genuinely dangerous and genuinely wronged at the same time, and the reason that combination is so hard to hold is that your brain evolved to make fast decisions about threats, not accurate ones. When something in your environment is dangerous, the efficient response is to categorize it and act. Nuance costs time. Time costs lives. A group that hesitated over whether the dangerous person meant to be dangerous is a group that got sick. So we compress people. We give them a name that contains their worst outcome, and then we react to the name. There are, right now, healthy carriers of things walking past you. That is not a metaphor. It is basic epidemiology. Asymptomatic transmission is a normal feature of infectious disease, and the reason it terrifies people is not the biology. It is that it breaks the deal your instincts made with the world. The deal where danger looks like danger. Mary Mallon's real crime, the one nobody could forgive, was that she looked completely fine. Hundreds of carriers walked free because they agreed to disappear quietly. Mary Mallon spent 26 years on an island because she refused to agree she was dangerous, and she was.